Happy today. I am William Brown from IamWilliamBrown.com, and this is Disconnect to Connect, one word conversations. Now, the the smile that I have on my face is about me getting a haircut, which is really crazy because I have gotten a number of haircuts in my life, but I guess not being able to get one has really I have gained an appreciation of I guess looking good or something. So I look so good or feel so good. I even put on my Batman shirt. So so yeah. So I am excited about our conversation today because our word is adult, and I have those moments for myself that I question if I am, and it's like sometimes that just because I reached a certain number, an age, that there is a behavior that I should have. So this is going to be a fun, and I really think an enlightening conversation because, like I do, I invite my friends to come and have this conversation with me. So let me do that. And good morning.
Good morning.
Oh, so this is the time where I ask my guests to introduce themselves however it feels comfortable to them.
Sure. So my name is Sunny. My last name is VonMutius, but most people don't try to pronounce it. And I have lived this really rich, interesting life. I am retired and I now get to play in business. So I run other people's businesses for them and I work with people in designing their lives. And I do all of it because I love it.
Wow, it's like I'm trying not to be envious, but but no, I just really, I get that, and I look for that moment in my life because I know that that is going to happen for me. So how does the word adult land for you?
Oh, adult is such a great word. It's such a great word because it literally means something different to every human being.
Hmm. How do you see that?
Well, I think some people define it by age, right? The
Right.
government tells us that when we turn 18, we can vote, we can be drafted. When we turn 21, we can magically drink. When you turn 16, you can drive in most
Right.
states. Um, but then there's also maturity, right? I know
Right.
people who are teenagers and their parents are dealing with something. So the teenager's the adult in the house.
Right.
So they can be,
Yeah.
12, 13 years old and adulting, right? For some
Right.
people, it's about responsibility. I have a job, I have a house, I have all this weight on my shoulders. I must be an adult.
Right.
So I find it really interesting because every person has their own lens and their own definition. Some people may not have ever even thought about it. Some people may not have ever even thought they were an adult and they could be 80 years old, right? It's so
Right.
fascinating.
Yeah, I can definitely see that there are some times in my life where I want to, I guess, put that label on or take it off. It's like, yeah, you know what? I don't want to be adult right now. You know what I mean? And it's like just kind of like, so it's like, I don't know what I want to be, but, responsible or, have the answers or whatever, I don't want it. And so really trying to decide that I am going to be adult or not be an adult is it's kind of an interesting way, but I don't know if I'm telling on myself or I don't know if a lot of other people feel that way too.
You know if the adults are going to come judge you?
Right. Right. It's like you're
Well,
52 years old, right?
what's interesting too is that I think adulting and the word adult gets kind of a bad rap, almost like it's a bad thing. Like, embrace your inner child, never grow up. The the idea, the Peter Pan syndrome, right? So it's like it's almost a bad thing to become an adult. And I don't know that that's necessarily true. I think we get to decide how we define adult, and we could embrace it as like a, milestone or a rite of passage into this new way of looking at the world that can include fun, and can include setting aside responsibility.
Right. It's kind of interesting that when you were saying that, my appreciation of adults basically came because when I was a child, when I looked and saw adults. So if I saw adults, or older people, behaving badly, adult wasn't a good thing. Adult wasn't a good thing to be, or aspire to, or anything like that. But it depends on my role models to how it's
Mhm.
going to move forward. And I kind of knew that, but I was, and like I said, until you said that, I was like, wow. And it's like no one says, okay, this is our lesson on adulthood, right? Type of thing. But you just, as a child, as a child, I can clearly see how there were things that were happening or not happening with the adults in my life, or the older people, because in some cases I didn't feel that they were adults. I
Mhm.
felt like they were just older than me and could tell me what to do, and I looked to them for guidance, but they weren't acting like adults, for me. And so it's like I said, it's interesting that I never really gave that a consideration before.
Well, you bring up an interesting point too of respect being a barometer of an adult. If they're worthy of respect and reverence, right? Like for some people, that's the measure of an adult.
Right. Yeah. I think, when is this? When is the point where we own our adulthood, where we just like, you know what,
Mm.
I'm I'm an adult. I'm going to just own it and be in it.
I think that's different for everyone. This word is perfect for me because I don't think you even know this, but if you boil all of my commitments in life down to one statement, I am committed that people not have to transition into adulthood without a support system. And adulthood
That's
could mean in your business, it could mean in life, right? There's lots of different areas in which we could apply adulthood. And I work with some people who are in their 60s. I worked with a gentleman who was 79, and he was like, Sunny, I don't feel like an adult. How do I become an adult? And he was 79 years old, right?
wow.
So I think it's different for everyone, and I think maybe it happens multiple times. You become a parent and you're kind of forced to be the adult
Right.
to a child, at least until they can be self-sustaining, whatever that is. For some people, it's 5. For some people, it's 20, right? But
Right.
then when your kids grow up and leave, you're left reinventing yourself, and there's no one to take care of. And if you defined adulthood by parenting and your kids no longer need a parent, you get to redefine it again, or you
Right.
have to redefine it again, right? It depends on your view there. But yeah, I think it happens multiple times in a lifetime where we consider, and maybe we don't always use the word adult, but we consider, what it means to be responsible for our lives, to feel like we've hit a milestone or a certain, place, whether it's pride or like a burden. But
Right.
I think it happens in cycles.
I think you bring up an interesting point. There was a fascinating thing that I just heard earlier this year around March, right before, at the beginning of March. I was at Wisdom 2.0, and one of the vendors was talking about adult development. Hey, come take our program on adult development. And I was like, what the heck is that? I know child development and how we work, to be a better child, but the adult development aspect of it, I just really didn't understand, or couldn't appreciate it. And so when you're talking about supporting adults in their adulthood, what is adult development all about?
Well, I think that your correlation is really spot on. Is we talk about child development, right? And oftentimes that gets into psychology and like hand-eye coordination and how they're developing their humanity, right? How their humanness is coming together, whether it's their physical body or their awareness of themselves. And we pay a lot of attention to that.
Right.
But we forget to pay attention to what happens when we go through another growth spurt, usually in like our late teens, early 20s. And then it happens again when you hit whatever milestone birthday makes you feel old. And we do it
Right.
again,
Right.
when we have a big milestone like retirement. And there's not always classes or support system or even a guide for that,
Right.
especially if your parents have transitioned and are no longer with you, or if they weren't a great role model to begin with.
Right.
Who do you look to for that? And that's where
Right.
I think having a guide or a mentor or classes, whatever feels good, asking for help, there's no
Right.
shame in that. In fact, I think that's the first step in, kind of stepping into adulthood is being willing to ask for help and admitting that you don't know everything, right? For me, that's a
Right.
barometer of adulthood is the not know it all. Teenagers are like know it alls.
Right.
Like, oh, you're still a teenager. But when they get to the point where they're like,
Right.
oh, I don't, can you help me? I'm like, oh, you're starting to adult.
Right, right. I've said to my adult children many a times, "Oh yeah, I remember when I knew it all," right? And I,
Exactly.
and it's like, yeah, that's you'll get to a point where you'll start losing some some awareness of things, or knowing some things. I just really feel what was coming up for me when you were speaking there too, is that embracing my adulthood or embracing the adult is almost like it feels like I have to lose something,
Mm.
and it shouldn't feel like I have to lose my childhood to be an adult. It should be an and, but it feels like I'm losing something. The more that I like step into or own my adultness, I'm like losing something. Can you help me through kind of not losing that that child, the child part of me, so I can bring that along the ride.
Well, I think there's a few things, packed up in there, right? One is we
Right.
talked earlier about role models,
Right.
right? Who are adults in your life that still have childlike curiosity,
Right.
that still have a childlike sense of wonder and play about them that you
Right.
can reference as a role model in that. I'm really grateful. I was homeschooled by my mom, and my mom
Mm.
is now she's obviously older, right? We
Right.
won't say her age out on the air.
Right.
Um, but she still frequently gets mistaken for my sister, not because she looks young, but because she acts young.
Wow.
She plays so much. She's the first one to say, let's play a game. She's the
Right.
first one to like get creative with leftover, toilet paper rolls in the house, right? She's
Right.
just super playful. And, she's my mother, right? So I had that great role model. The other thing
Right.
I would say is considering your priorities.
Hmm.
Because if you're feeling like you're losing your childhood, right, your ability to not be an adult, what does
Right.
that mean to you, first of all? And then, second of all, how can you create balance and prioritize time in your world to make space for that? So, one example is
Right.
I color, right? And oftentimes, when I pull out my coloring book, is when I'm starting to feel a little repressed by my adultness.
Right. Right.
And that's a way for me to reconnect with my inner child. And you can tell how repressed I feel by whether or not I color in the lines or
Right. Okay.
not. Right?
Right, I get it. I get it because it's that the adult tells you you have to be in the lines, you have to do all
Mhm.
that other kind of stuff. It has to be right, and you know, bears aren't purple, right?
Right?
all those
Exactly.
things, right? All
Exactly.
those things that I hear that is going through my head. I think responsibility, is a key word. If I don't feel responsible, or if I feel like I can't be responsible, I feel like I am not being an adult in this matter. I am,
Mm.
and I break it down in my coaching. Responsibility is your ability to respond. And the more that I give up my ability to respond to something that happens or something, a conversation, that I'm having or anything like that, I am losing responsibility. I have no touch with in it. And so it is just really really interesting to I, to feel like that play within in that. And do you think it's more about what other people feel, that the fact that if you play, if you play too much or if you color outside the lines, is there a concern that how other people will see you and says, "Oh, she's childish," or or what, she's not responsible, or all that other kind of stuff? Is the judgments that come along with that kind of keep? Have you felt that keeps you from embracing your adulthood or childlike nature or everything?
Sometimes, probably around certain individuals more than others, or like certain group situations more than others. But
Mm-hmm.
I've done a lot of work with this over the years since this is,
Right.
an area of passion for me. So I choose to look at it as an opportunity to lead by example
Hmm.
rather than, and if people judge me, well then that's their nonsense. But it's an opportunity to lead by example. So
Right.
um, I have some friends that when they get into a fight, especially they often fight in the kitchen, and when they get
Right.
into a fight, they use their responsibility to
Mm-hmm.
choose play. So like they'll
Hmm.
pick up a piece of pasta and have a sword fight until they get their aggression out, right? Like they'll be silly
Right.
about
Right.
it. Like you
Hmm.
should have boiled the water with salt. Oh, should I? On guard, right? And they
Right.
turn it into to play. So they're still
Right.
responding and processing, what they need to as adults to navigate their home together, but they
Right.
choose to do it, with some childlike wonder and play and curiosity, and they're able to blend those things. It's actually really fun to witness.
Right. There's a part of me that's like, yeah, that's crazy, right?
Right?
It's like I think that's the adult label. Like, what the hell is So it is like, so I guess I have some internal judgments or things that I need to let go, right? Some things about my definition of my adult label. I just need to let go. There's a lot of movement within that. There's a lot of love and compassion and maturity. I really I really get that. I mean, it's like, we say things like, with younger people, we'll say, they're older than their years, or something. They're more
Hmm.
mature than and it's
Old
like,
soul.
right, old soul and all that other kind of stuff. But it is just a place of, in some cases, just owning themselves. I mean, having a self awareness and just being there, and I think for me, if the adult label can really serve me better or well, I need to give it room to to be aware of what's so in my life, or
Mm.
or what's missing. It's just, instead of saying this should be, because I see more often, when I being an adult, I feel like it's like, okay, this is a standard, this is what I'm supposed to do, this is all, this is, there's like a checklist and all that other kind of stuff, instead of, hey, what's happening right now and how am I going to be in it? How am I going to use my years, my responsibilities, my maturity to kind of engage, this environment in in a way that will make a difference. And I think that's a totally different way of looking at being an adult. And that's a game that I think I want to play. It's because I like I said, I can, when I was on Professor Google, and like the day before the show, I'll find, the word and the quotes, and kind of look for, images and kind of go from there. when I put in adult, most of them were, were jokes. It's like, yeah, if you're tired, if you're not tired at the end of the day, you're not doing it right, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's like all the things that adults say, right?
Mm-hmm. Totally.
And it was like, where is the empowering things about our adulthood, or anything? I didn't have the time or effort. I'm sure it's somewhere in Professor Google's head, somewhere. But I just couldn't find it. I was like, you know what? We'll just, maybe it'll come up in the conversation. But it just feels like, um, I don't want to say it's a joke, but it's like a standard that we have for ourselves that we know that we can't reach, but still we hold each other to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it has a lot of cultural significance put around it that can make
Mm,
it feel heavy. It can make it feel like
mm,
something to avoid or to be sarcastic and ironic about. Um,
right.
and that's fine too. I tend to look for a perspective that leaves me empowered. So that's where I
Mm,
come back to redefining the word. I'm always kind of like one question I like to play in with adult as a word is if the word didn't exist, would we be motivated to grow up?
hmm.
Like if we didn't have the concept of adult versus child, right? If we didn't have that in our
Right.
language,
Right.
would we even be motivated to attain that level? And then, the next click down from that for me is we have lots of different words for children. We have infant, toddler, we have tween, we have teenager, but then there's just
Right.
adult. There's
Right.
no varying degrees. There's no like quantifying how adult are you. That's kind of
Right.
weird, don't you think?
Right. Yeah. You know what? I never really, it's like we have arrived somewhere, or someone,
Right.
it's not even that we have arrived. We have been pushed there because,
Sometimes,
it's
yeah.
like, we've got, you are, 18. You should be, you should know better.
Poof, you're an
What?
adult, right?
When? Right, right, right. You're 21, or you're 70, like you were saying. You're 70, and you never felt like an. What is that all? What is wrong with you? Right?
Right?
It is very, very interesting, and I think, I was a term that, I've heard on the news and recently, and because of our political kind of clouds or whatever, I don't even know what the hell it is. But it's like, I'm going to be the adult in the room, or we need an adult in the room, or something like that. And it's like you see all of these, people, older people, that you would think, okay, do they not think that there's any adults in there, or what is really going on? Is there's a level of responsibility, or is there like this adult language that they're not using, that we I don't know if there is a book, and it's kind of other thing that's crazy, that you have this standard for adult, right? But then you have, things like crazy, and this is going sideways where I don't know why this is coming up, but it's like you put adult education, it's like, or adult, um, entertainment, it's like something totally it like just went sideways, and it's
Mm-hmm.
like,
That's
so
true. The
so
word
is
adult
that
gets attached to entertainment in a way that kind of makes it naughty.
right? And it's like, wow, is that what adults are doing? Whoa.
Right.
you know
Well, and think
and
about
it's
being
just
a teenager today. The role model of adult is so confusing because they're being told when they turn a certain age they're an adult, but then they see these people who are decades past that age doing things in the media that are not
right,
aligning with what they're being told. And I'm not just talking about politics. Just generally
right,
speaking with how connected we are these days with technology.
right,
It's got to be more confusing than ever to as you're
Right.
coming up of age, like, what do I even aspire to? What does this word even mean? I think that's where the adulting conversation, that's a new word. It's actually in the dictionary now of adulting. They've made it into a verb. And that really
Right.
came
Well,
about with, the millennials and then the Gen Zers after that being really confused of what they're aspiring to, right?
right. And what they're doing, and when they don't want to do it. Um, there's a concept of the rite of passage, the right, and I'm sure it happens with in some communities and cultures within the male and female type of once you reach a certain age you will be given this information or knowledge, and then there's more responsibilities that are placed on you. But do you think as a society we have a rite of passage, or is it just that all right, you're now 18, good
I
luck?
think it's a,
you
a
know
big missing.
right.
Yeah, totally. I
Right.
think it's a really big missing. One demographic I volunteer with is kids who are aging out of foster care. So that means somebody
Mm,
that's been in the system and is turning 18. And literally the government says, "Oh, you're an adult. Everything changes. We're now going to change everything about how we take care of you. We're going to step back. You now have to be responsible." And it's like they didn't magically get the skills they need because they had a
right.
birthday.
Right.
So no, I think that's a really big missing for us as a culture right now is we've really lost a lot of our rites of passage. Certain cultures, like there's still the quinceañera, right? Which is when a
Right.
girl turns 15 and becomes an adult.
Right.
But they've really become more about the party, about the,
Right.
the social
Ceremonial, right? Hmm.
ceremony, right? Versus like a rite of
Right.
passage in a lot of families, at
Right.
least. So
Right.
that's something that I would love to see us, bring back and, um, something that I try to do with some of the kids I work with is to give them that sense of, you've really come a long way. And this is a big milestone for you, right? To give them that personal sense. But yeah, there's a lot of ways, like we've talked about a lot, right? It's not just when you're a teenager becoming 18.
Right.
There's so many times in life where you have this milestone. One that's been coming up a lot for me recently is it's mostly the Gen X generation, but we have a whole subset of culture right now where people are not only taking care of their adult children, they're potentially
Mm,
grandparents, but their parents are aging and need to be cared
mm,
for as well. So they have two or three generations they're taking care of. That's a
right.
pretty big shift in your world.
Right.
That's a whole new level of adulting, if you will. But there's not really
Right.
like a rite of passage or any real support system to teach people how to manage that in their lives. And
Right.
it's happening a lot right now with our baby boomers hitting that certain age. So there's a lot of ways in which kind of the responsibility of being an adult changes throughout life. It's really interesting.
Do you think, now with COVID-19 and the pandemic, of how there's a lot of resets that are happening, or
Hmm.
that may happen or could happen. In some cases, there's going to be some people that are just waiting to go back to whatever life that they thought, they had, and they're okay with this, status quo type of living. And then I think there's a percentage of us that can see this as an opportunity to kind of redefine my life and kind of look at my relationships, look at my work, look at, how I personally live my life for myself, and kind of say, hey, this this is what's important to me. This is how I'm going to, adult. This is how I'm going to live. This is how I'm going to show up in the world. And do you think that um, more do you think adult will take on a different role, or is it so embedded in how we do things, or is this an opportunity for someone to speak up and say, hey, you have more say in the matter?
I'm not sure that I'm not sure that adults will be a part of that unless we collectively make it so. But I
Hmm.
do think that there's a lot of addressing and reevaluating what I would call kind of tenets or qualities of being an adult. And I don't know that that word or that
Right.
label will necessarily be a big part of the conversation. But like, I know a lot of people
Right.
in my world are really reevaluating how they adult with relationship to their finances
Right.
because a
Got it.
lot of people are unemployed. I'm in Orlando and there's, I don't know, probably 80,000 people that are either unemployed or furloughed from the theme parks alone. Right. So that
Right.
really impacts your finances. That really impacts how you relate to your fiscal or abundance or prosperity. And so I know in my world, a lot
Right.
of people are really reevaluating how they relate to money, how they relate to money as energy, to a mechanism, to a value, or like defining themselves by their value, by how much money they have. And in my opinion, that
Right.
is part of a relationship to how you adult. But I don't know that the word adult is
Right.
coming up for them necessarily.
Hmm. Yeah. I get that. I mean, it's. I think our responsibilities, what we're responsible for, is probably coming up because it's definitely has been
Mm-hmm.
coming up for me and just kind of seeing, what I'm saying, and and what am I doing? I mean, I think this show is proof of that because before the pandemic, the one reason why I wasn't doing Facebook lives or just being out there is because I felt like, oh, my hair needs cut, or I need to, I don't look, I have to be perfect, or something. I have to have this crystal clear message and just kind of go. And I realized that through this show that I put together, there's sometimes I'm not as coherent as I would love to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I want people, but there was a reason why I did this show live instead of record it is because sometimes that's how conversations work, or most of the times that's how conversations work. We talk through things. We say something brilliant or stupid and we kind of figure it out, right? At the same time. And because of our relationships with each other, we give each other the grace to kind of work through that. And so I wanted to, one, prove to myself and just, with the people that come on and just say, hey, are you willing to be there with me within this conversation and to go from there. So um, I am just so present to how I'm showing up, and I think the adult label is kind of running in the background because like I said, I'm in my 50s, so there is like, okay, there's a certain part of your life you should have together, and why
Mm-hmm.
isn't it together, type of thing. And it is just now just giving myself the grace that, what, it ain't together. Now that I know, let's get it together. Now let's take responsibility for it and just kind of look at it. If I just ignore it, then I am, I think then I'm being,
Well,
then I'm being in a retro. I don't
I
know. That's
I
that's
hear
how
a
I feel.
lot of a little bit in what you're saying, but in a lot in conversations I'm seeing on social media of people really essentially judging themselves or making themselves wrong for not being adult enough to weather this pandemic. And I think it's
Right,
really important to remember that we were never supposed to have to prepare for something like this. Like, I don't think
right,
anybody's so adult that they were prepared to weather this sort of global chaotic
right,
issue, right? Like this is,
right,
I don't think anybody's that adult. I don't think this being able to handle this particular situation is probably not the best barometer of your adult label,
right,
right? Like
right,
this is such an anomaly. Um, but I hear a lot of people really being hard on themselves because they're, like you said,
right,
energy or coherency or financial situation or, not dealing well with social isolation. And, these aren't normal times, people.
right.
So, yeah.
So, is there any? like I said, I'm not looking for like a magic pill or or something.
Good, because I don't have any.
Um, that's um, is um, is there a first step to identify how you are adulting, how you're how well a barometer or something that you can say, hey, if you ask yourself this or these questions, it will kind of let you know or kind of give you some impact in that.
I think if you're asking that, that's the first step. So, like anybody who is actually inquiring into, am I an adult? And how do I
Right,
tell if I'm an adult? I think that's the first step because a lot of people don't even do that, right? And
right.
then once you reach that point, it it's really about priorities.
Hmm.
For a lot of people, a priority that they say that they don't act upon is family and relationships,
Right,
right? So we have it that if we're an adult, we have to go to work and make a lot of money and make the house look good. And, we do all these things about looking good outside, but we don't
right,
necessarily spend the time with our family. So I always recommend people to start with what are your priorities and are your actions regularly aligning with those priorities? And having
right,
that shift is a really good place to start.
right. No, I totally get it. It's um, there's a thing that I have been working through, my intentions and my attention, and recognizing that in order for my intentions to show up in my life, I have to have an awareness of what has my attention.
Mhm.
And too often, if my what has my attention is not aligned with my intentions, I will not see my intentions,
Totally.
um, and it's just it's one letter, but or a couple letters, um, but um, but it is really, it comes down to priorities, boundaries, um, um, I think curiosity. I think there's sometimes I feel like a lot of time as as an adult, for me, I felt that I couldn't be curious. I couldn't, I couldn't do some of the things that I did as a kid. I was one of the why kids,
Hmm.
why. I would why you to death.
I'm
I
not
would why
surprised.
you until someone would say, stop it. I don't know, right? It's like, stop asking me questions, right? And it's just try to like understand, get a clarity of it. And I have embraced with my kids. I have adult children that when they ask me things and saying that, what, I was just making it up as I went along. You know, the framework was, I love these human beings that I'm charged to. I want the best for them, but we're just going to see how this rolls, right? Right, and it's like there's not this parent, playbook that I was operating from, and it's like the same thing, as this adulthood, and I think the more that I have embraced the not knowing, but the more that I know about myself or I discover about myself, then I can show up. And I think that, like all of our labels, it comes down to our self awareness,
Absolutely.
our and
Absolutely.
it's like and honoring that, and I think sometimes, you know, having awareness of self is not celebrated,
And it's not
you know,
easy.
and it's not easy. Absolutely.
It can be very confronting.
Right. Yeah. I've been confronted many times with, because, it feels like you just want to see, the nice the nice my nice side, or
Of
the
course.
the acceptable side, or the appreciative side, and all of those things. But all the other, it's called the ugly, negative, this, all the shadows of my life,
Hmm.
it's like I cannot believe that's still there, you know. And I think in some cases, in that adult label, is that, as a child, you're dealing with, being, mean, nasty, all that other kind of stuff, all those kind of things. You kind of work out all your shadows, and then as an adult, you're just well mannered, and and nice and calm and all that kind of stuff, and you have all your ducks in a row, and you have all the answers, and it's just great.
There's
And
more
that's just not the
permission for your
truth.
shadows to show up as a kid than an adult. That's for sure.
All right, absolutely,
That's
and
for sure.
I think sometimes as adult, because I will say this, I used this in the conversation that I had on manhood, is that anytime that I feel like my man card is being tested, or or something, or being questioned, you know sometimes I'll say out loud, and sometimes I'll say it to myself, I'm a grown ass man. You can't tell me what to do. And it's like, it is, I recognize that that's not the man talking. That's the kid talking, right? Kind of
Totally.
only. And it's like, any time that I have to, like, hey, I'm an adult, type of thing. That's not the adult speaking. That's the kid trying to take on that label, and get that. Are there any ways to kind of, one, just staying aware of that, of when you're not really being, I guess, adult or fully, but you're just trying, trying to prove to yourself and other people. um I don't know, I need help in that area. So I'm just kind
Well,
of
I think
asking.
that
Right,
the moment you notice it is huge,
right,
right? Because we're talking about self-awareness being a
right,
huge tenet of adult, right? So
right,
noticing it and then developing a muscle and a game with yourself of being willing to be with it, right? I know
right.
one thing I've been
Got
dealing
it.
with a lot through the pandemic is there's days where I have stuff I should do, right? As a responsible adult, I should be
Right,
working or I should be cleaning the kitchen or whatever the thing is. And all I want to do
right,
is sit on the couch and play Panda
right,
Pop or watch
right,
another Netflix show, right? And
right,
noticing that and acknowledging that as an adult, I have to take care of myself. I have to be gracious with
right.
myself. So I can actually be an
Wow,
adult that does a very childlike thing if it recharges me and it helps me stay
right,
balanced and it helps me have the space to stay self-aware. So it doesn't have to be contradictory, but it takes effort and practice
right,
to notice that and
right,
to give yourself grace and permission. And I think that's actually a very adult thing is giving yourself permission to be a kid, right? Giving your
right.
inner child
Wow.
permission to come out and play. I think that's actually a very adult action or a very adult decision,
Wow. Hey, yep. That's how we got permission to play from adults, right?
right? Right?
Right. It's
So
like, can
I,
I
as an
go
adult, can
outside?
give my inner child
Right.
permission to come out and
Right.
play for a while.
Right. Well, that's great. We could talk about this for hours,
Totally.
but because I'm sure there's a number of other questions or hacks that it's like, it's like, Sonny, help me, right? But what last thing that you want to leave us through, and how it's not even how to be a better adult, but just kind of embracing that, accepting that label, and letting it go at the same time.
Yeah, both are important. I think it starts with it starts with self-awareness. So
Mm,
if adult is a word that you're struggling with or is, confronting for you or something, even if you're resisting it or avoiding it, if you're wanting growth for yourself, the best place to start is with an inquiry. And I think
mm,
that by virtue of taking on that inquiry, you're actually moving towards that thing that you're aspiring to. And the next layer to that is not being afraid to ask for help. The gentleman
Mm.
you encountered at Wisdom 2.0 is doing adult development classes. I offer several classes in my world to increase your self-awareness and to kind of shift into adult mode. And I'm sure there's lots of other people doing the same thing. So not being afraid to ask for help. And maybe it's not even an adulting class. Maybe it's, where you feel like you're not a successful adult is in finances. So go take a class, hire an expert, ask somebody in your world
Right.
that's good at it to help you. So
Right.
I think it's just about the being willing to be in the inquiry is a huge
Mm.
first step.
Wow.
Huge.
No, I totally get that. That is landing on a, it's like coming home, it's been flying around and that really landed for me. I so much appreciated this conversation. Um, Thank you very much for being on One Word. Do you have time to stay in the green room for a moment while in the show?
Of course. Thank you for having me. This has been a lot of fun.
Okay, wonderful, great. Well, I don't know um, what you guys got out of that, but for me, the one thing that was crystal clear is that um, a part of my adulting, or me taking on the label as adult, is just the awareness of what I know and what I don't know, and my willingness to get help, or to seek help, or to learn, or to inquire. This has been great, and I would love to hear how this show landed for you, and how well and how adulting works for you. But the world wants you, the world needs you, and the world is waiting for you. So go adult and go be you. Thanks. See you tomorrow.